first webcast of 2023. I'm excited to welcome our guest. And if I wasn't, I wouldn't tell you because he's my boss, mentor, and friend, Alex Webb, the CEO of F12.net. Alex, welcome to the webcast.
Hi, Devon. Hi, everybody. Thank you.
Excellent. Well, today we're going to spend about 30 minutes discussing, it's the beginning of the year, it's January, what it is that we're going to look forward to in 2023. We're going to explore a little bit of Alex, your lessons, your learnings from 2022. We're going to talk about trends and challenges that you see in the business community in 2023, what you're hearing from your network. And then we're going to dive into some of the top objectives that F12 has for 2023, and more importantly, why they would matter to our clients. So let's begin right away. Alex, 2022 was another dumpster fire in some ways, and that a lot of weird things happened. What did you learn from 2022?
Well, there was a ton of learning. There's no shortage. I mean, it was sort of 2022 was a breakout year from COVID, is the way I like to sort of, after sort of being through the tranches of COVID as everybody was, 2022 was really sort of where we spent the majority of the time back in the office. And, one of the big learnings I had, Devon, in that time was, trust your instincts. As a business owner, as a manager, as a leader, the business tells you something of what's going on. And we, I think by and large, most people, or if you're anything like me, sort of ignored some of the signs that were in front of us. And through 2021 and coming into the end, and as we sort of straddled into 2022. So one of my biggest lessons, I think, was just sort of trust your instincts. I knew what I needed to do. I just took a little too long to do it. And ultimately, when we started to really engage and we started to get people reconnected, things started to really happen for us. And
so help me connect the dots there between what you felt that you didn't act on your instincts early enough and how that involved reconnecting people.
Yeah, so obviously we went back to office, so we were in a remote. By and large, in 2021, we're remote, and as the government agencies in most jurisdictions sort of locked people down again in December, if you recall, and that pushed into 2022. Ultimately, for us, we could have maybe chose to sort of not participate. I know some businesses did. I think you would have been met with some resistance no matter what across, but my instincts is that was probably the time that we needed to really start to engage. The world was going through a lot of change, and we delayed it. And so we started to come back into the office more back into the March, April time zone. So but that was one big lesson for us. And sort of, when I look at the year in contrast, 2022, we accomplished 180 certifications at F12. So this was technical certifications, which are very, very difficult to do. That may not sound like a lot to a lot of people, but in contrast for us, we did 0 in 2021.
Wow. It's a big change.
Yeah, this was a massive change for everybody. And that's because the testing facilities, the ways that the testing, the education, the desire to be educated, and the learning, and the amount of new folks that were coming on. So, for us, I think it was a massive accomplishment and a big catch up to sort of get into that 180. And I'm super proud of everybody. And I think the other part was sort of moving to the flexible work arrangement and really making sure that we could sort of push ahead of the productivity loss that was lost by having folks remote. And so for me, it wasn't, this has been contested a number of times on webinars as far as, are people as productive remote as they are in the office? And I know where I stand on this, and we saw about a 30% productivity. It didn't mean people weren't working. It's what they accomplished in that same amount of work that they're doing in the time that made the difference. So for us, the FWA sort of push into 2022 was
just for
really
everybody.
Large.
FWA means flexible work arrangement. That's an internal term for how we're managing a hybrid and more flexible work arrangement while requiring some, in-house presence. I'm sure you'd agree. My observations as time went on was how strong the organization was, and I think this isn't unique to F12 when we first went remote, and there was this cultural inertia that carried us through, and our most experienced, most mature employees actually thrived. But new employees and new culture, it became really challenging to help mentor and develop talent. Not that others didn't find ways, but it was a challenge in our organization. I'm sure you'd agree.
Well, yeah, I mean, in this business, we're heavily reliant on constant development and education. And that doesn't happen. You can't sort of schedule that on a meeting on a,
Yeah.
just to have those events happen. And the other challenge we have is a lot of technical problems that we have are beyond the capability of a single person. So it takes a collaborative effort of a group of people to solve a problem. And that's a lot easier when you can sort of spin a chair, you can learn and educate and
When the
develop.
team leads overhearing the conversations, go,
Yep.
actually, can I just help you with this? I know, yeah.
It's just as simple as that. And
Yeah.
so we saw things take longer to fix. We saw things take longer to deploy. We projects would get elongated. This was sort of a trend that we saw building through 2021. And when I talk about those instincts that I was, those signs were telling, and we sort of led ourselves to believe that COVID was the reason, and after COVID it would be done, but it wasn't. Even without COVID, it still existed. It wasn't until we got back together and reconnected as humans that it stopped. And that's when the development started again, which included, higher retention of employees, less mental health challenges across the organization. And by the way, when we get the ability, we get that, so we get the glimpse into client data too. We see the amount of user changes
Yeah.
as an aggregate total. And it's on a quantum of about a 4x ratio compared to what it was under normal circumstances. And so what I mean by that is, if we do 200 user changes in a month, we were hitting numbers of 800 and 1,000 a month of
So
user
how
changes
many
that
of
were
our
happening in the funnel.
clients were experiencing staff changes of their own? I mean, it was
Yes.
called the Great Quit for a reason, right? Or the Great Resignation, different names. It was a phenomena that businesses had to wrestle with. That's for sure. I don't want to spend too much time in 2022, but we can't leave it without bringing up that inflation. I'm a Gen Xer, so inflation was this thing that my parents talked about, and they had crazy mortgage payments in the 80s. And it came alive at long last and created an interesting environment, to say the least, for the business community.
Yeah, I have a bit of a different take as to why, and inflation was the answer to, the interest rates was an answer to inflation. And so for me, I think this was, maybe they misread it a little bit, because I actually don't think the inflation drivers are the same as what they thought they were. For me, I sort of have, and this is my opinion, by the way, I think it was mostly led by supply chain. I think the fact that we couldn't make chips and products and some of these things, that's what was driving up the prices
Certainly
across
in
the.
IT and cars, and chips are
Yeah,
everywhere these days. Hey,
and I mean,
copper
and as
nickels.
the government maybe increases the interest rates to help slow down things so they can sort of pull some of the money away. I mean, these are strategies that work, but they're not seeing the same effect either that they thought that they would see, or as fast as they would see it, or as and so the way I sort of see this 2023 unfolding. And by the way,
Good
the fact that we,
segue. Let's
yeah,
go to
yeah,
2023. Yeah, good. Yeah.
at least we're not starting in a lockup. So this was one big thing for 2023. Like last year, it was well into March before we were out of a lockup. So starting this year, it already started with a different tone. Even though growth is going to be slower because of the interest rate increases, I think we're going to start to see the end of some of the supply chain challenges. Things are going to start to continue to start to flow. But the big one for me, I think those are the positives, but I still feel that we're going to have a labor shortage. And I attribute this maybe a little bit more to when I talk about productivity loss, people are supplementing that with adding people. So I think the world's going to still feel that for a little bit of time, in the coming months. But more and more organizations are figuring out that they can maybe automate their way. They could do things a little bit differently, and maybe not do it with as many people that they thought that they needed in order to do it. But yeah,
Well,
labor shortage is gonna certainly be a challenge from
there's
2023.
two sides to that. I'm sure you'd agree. Is finding the talent is
Yeah.
a challenge, and then when you have them, they're more expensive than they were a few years ago. So at
Yep.
some way, you've got to figure out how to navigate that in an organization. Any other trends you see that are important in 2023?
Again, I don't know. I don't actually know things that I don't want to add. There's probably not relevant for today's conversation as far as.
Very good.
So I think we'll just let's end the 2023 world prediction
All right.
at those points.
So now let's talk about a little bit about F12's objectives for 2023. And I'm gonna share them on the screen and read them, and then let's dive into what they are and why they matter for our customers. So
Do you mind if we just spend a little time on the industry, Devon? Would
sure,
that be
yeah,
okay with
absolutely.
you before we
Yeah,
jump
for
into
sure.
F12? I think it would just be sort of I think maybe some information that some of the folks maybe want to hear. So you know, one of the things that we're seeing industry-wise is sort of some of the trends are, cybersecurity is continuing to be a top challenge for organizations. We're seeing companies more urgent than ever. We're seeing more companies get denied insurance. We're seeing even, it doesn't sort of end there just with you as an organization, all the way down your supply chain. It only takes one domino to fall, and then all of a sudden there's a ripple effect. And we're seeing sort of
Yeah,
more and more of these events start to take place. And of course, the effects of hybrid on the remote workforce and the effects of security on those folks that are working remote or in a hybrid environment. And then, of course, now with the bad guys also having access to artificial intelligence and machine learning, we need to be leveraging more and more of those technologies from a cyber perspective. So this is
it's certainly a trend. We're hearing from our account managers the difficulty organizations are experiencing, and the bar is lifting to get cyber insurance. We had a webcast, I believe it was the one that ended 2022, where we had one of our insurance partners that we work with, Asira, bring on some experts, and they discussed that the payouts for cyber policies are so high that they're killing the profitability not just of cyber, but it's leading to increases across the business insurance
mhm.
landscape. And so the whole industry is wrestling with this. They've underwritten more risk than they realized because the landscape keeps changing. So, this is the challenge. We're definitely a trend of the business community.
Well, in in doing nothing is not an answer. And
Hmm.
so I think we used to, that was part of the solution, is just insure it, insure the risk. But now folks aren't getting away with that. They actually have to sort of hit it front and center. So this is going to be a big trend for the coming years. The next one sort of for me sort of comes into this productivity management. And so, as I sort of led to earlier in the conversation, no more invisible roles in an organization. Being able to sort of measure what people are doing and sort of their effective. I'm not talking, clock in, clock out kind of stuff. I'm talking
Okay.
actually what they accomplish in their role for the organization to be a productive worker. And so more and more tools are coming available to better understand. Microsoft's a good example of this, where you can actually measure, the amount of departments, the amount of communications that they're having, the amount of touches somebody has. Because if you think about sort of coming into the office, somebody might have a cultural connection with people, and that's how they help the
Sure. Yeah.
organization. Sometimes they're client facing, sometimes they're in the back office sort of making sure that the accounting and all of the stuff are tracked and managed. But the effectiveness, all of that, and the quantum by which they do it are the tools that are sort of up and coming in the world. So this is another key driver. And so there can be some more self-awareness, more management awareness as to what people are doing. Another trend is this adoption of automation and artificial intelligence, and so by its own nature is growing incredibly fast. I don't know, Devin, if you've seen, the chat. I do
Well,
believe
Chat
you
GPT
perhaps.
is the first time I've talked to an AI and actually been like, oh my goodness, this is not just an algorithm. This is helpful, to a spooky degree. And you
Yeah.
start thinking, even just having contextual awareness, because you could talk about something and then come back to it and it knows kind of what you've been chatting about. This is going to have a massive disruption for knowledge industry in general. It's exciting, but it's also
It is
disruptive.
scary, and all of those things. So GPT, by the way, is a product from OpenAI, and it's a technology that you can embed, and you can basically take all of this content. It'll self-write websites to content. It's
You can ask
incredible,
it,
right?
write me the next blockbuster, the script for the next blockbuster movie, and it'll produce. You can ask it, write me a sonnet. Sorry, I'm like, my mind is going a million miles an hour, because I imagine to be a professor or a teacher right now and have to validate whether that essay was written by a machine or by your student.
Mhm.
And just in case you think, well, it'll be too polished for a grade 9, you can say, write it in the voice of a grade 9er, and it'll use like anyway. This is a whole new
Bro.
world. As a parent, I'm confused and scared and excited all at once. That's for sure.
Well,
And I encourage
and I think
anybody
what's
who's watching, if you haven't used ChatGPT, there's a public beta right now. You can go and interface with it for free. It's getting hammered, so sometimes you have to log in several times, but it is worth your time to explore this technology.
So I wouldn't tell anybody to make investments into artificial intelligence. I think it's too expensive to start developing around. But I would certainly look at software and some of the bigger companies that have embedded some of these
Mm-hmm.
technologies into their software stack and really start to leverage those, because it will give you a competitive advantage. It will automate mundane tasks. It will sort of take you to the next level. So that's another trend that I think we're going to see, and it's going to grow incredibly fast. And sort of the last one is this sort of around IT cost optimization. Over the last few years, we've seen this, move to the cloud, move to cloud applications, and so now companies have on-prem servers, cloud servers, application servers. So it's not that they used to just operate on 2 servers. Now they have 8 servers. And so really bringing this home and finding an optimized model by which they need to operate effectively is certainly going to trump a lot of things, because there will be dollars that people want to spend in the application stack, and I think that's going to come from some of that infrastructure side of things. And the other trend that I think I see and I connect with is that the devices aren't changing as fast. We used to see,
Mm.
every year, the compute power would, every 2 years actually it would double every 2 years under Moore's law, but that's slowing. So I think for us, we'll start to see devices have a real happy life cycle of 4 to 5 years rather than 2 to 3 years. And so people will have an opportunity to take those cost dollars and sort of throw those back over into maybe some of the infrastructure applications that will really enhance their organizations. So
It's interesting
those are the big
trends,
ones.
and I wonder if that will persist. This death of Moore's law that's been talked about, and it's really
Yeah.
fascinating because you and I have been in this industry for a long time, and always a 3-year-old computer was so much slower. Like it was, and a 4-year-old was, and it just got worse. And times they are changing, as we say.
Well,
All
now
right,
it's
well
the
that's a good.
difference if oh yeah, now the only difference is the battery only lasts 5 minutes after 3 years. That's the only
If it doesn't
we haven't
swell up and wreck
we
your
yeah,
laptop in the
we
meantime.
can't
Yeah,
we can't fix the lithium yet. So yeah.
if we can get it, that's a whole other thing. All right, well, I'm gonna use that as our segue here to go ahead and share a little bit of our objectives, and what we're most interested when we talk about objectives at F12 here is how it matters to our clients. We understand. So I'm going to read it, and then Alex, I'm going to take the slide down, and you and I can have a conversation about what these matter. So the top line objectives we set at F12 are fourfold. Deliver service excellence through experience management. Want to dig into a little bit of what that means. Increase our client familiarity and agility through regionalization. Drive process excellence with innovative systems and procedures, and evolve cybersecurity leadership to stay ahead of threats. So I think it's fair to say in looking through that list that it echoes some of the trends and ideas you were just talking about. And so let's explore it. Let's first of all talk about um, what F12 is focusing on around service excellence, Alex.
It's a great topic, and a lot of our DNA is around sort of, if we go back 25 years when we really got it right, and clients were what I would say were raving fans, and of course as a business you go through change and adjustments, but you know the world went to SLA as a measurement. Service level agreement is what an SLA is. So this is you know. Uh, 30 minutes are free Domino's pizza, like that's an SLA. And you sort of have a contractual engagement that clients want it done fast. And so for us, everybody in this industry, we were competing, and if you took 3 hours, the next guy could do it in 2 hours, the next guy could do it in an hour. And then it was, and this sort of ratcheted down, and what we've really started to explore with folks is this idea around experience level engagement. People don't care if it takes an extra 15 minutes, is what we've learned, or 20 minutes. What they want is it done right, They want it done effective. They want it done once. They don't want to sort of go back and forth. So they want to deal with a higher quality technician, as an example. They want a handheld process. They want to be informed as things are happening. It was less important that it was solved in 30 minutes than it was to sort of do this. And this is sort of this whole concept around SLA versus XLA.
You know what? It occurs to me this isn't unique to IT industry, although this idea of experience management is certainly on the eyes of a lot of top thinkers in our industry. But I go back to when I kind of first started. I remember being a technician, and there would be a dispatcher, and somebody would have an issue. Their network would be down, their computer wouldn't work. This is the Novell days in the 90s, and they would call and they would open up a request, and then I'd be scheduled for a week. 3 days might be quick, 4 days out, 5 days out, and then it changed. And our business's reliance on technology also changed. We got into managed services, and the speed became it. And we have measured and managed according to speed so often that there comes a point where, like Domino's Pizza, 30 minutes left. Isn't that the CEO that apologized for how bad their pizza was?
That's
like they
exactly
drove
right.
that metric, that KPI so fast, that the quality suffered. And so you have to have quality and how happy you are with the pizza, as well as did you get it on time. It's not that it
Yeah.
can't be
How
4
it
hours for
tasted,
your pizza. Yeah.
how it tasted and how it showed up were more
Yeah.
important than the 30 minutes. If that took 42 minutes, as long as it didn't take 3 hours. So there still is a time management in that equation, but the quality is more, good, faster, cheap. We all know that's the business rule, right? So
let's discuss, Alex, like a little bit of translating that into IT services. What kind of qualitative measurements can we do that would lead to better customer experience with their engagements with F12?
Well, it comes down to, the ability to customize the service engagement with the client, so that, you know, certain people maybe want a higher handheld and maybe ultra support, and other people just want, actually, I do want it fast. I just need to be able to change a password quickly. And I know that there's not going to be a heavy technical requirement, but I want access to that. So it's really more customizing the service delivery in a way that sort of speaks to the client, and really working with them to sort of manage it to their expectation as to how they want it and how they want to experience that. And that will be the change that this industry goes through, because I think the companies that get this right will thrive into the future.
One example that comes to my mind that I think illustrates this is a new employee starting in a company. And it used to be, in the old days, we'd log on to one server, we'd make a user account, and basically they were ready to go. And now you've got a procurement element, you've got software as a service, you've got to make sure you've got licenses, the correct licenses for that individual. You've got to configure the system according to the applications that are specific to that client in that role. You may have a procurement piece in terms of, do they need hardware, and if so, what kind of hardware? And so all of that needs to be done with speed, but we also want to make sure that's a wonderful experience, that when that individual begins in the organization, everything's set up right, and they feel good about that experience. Yeah.
And measuring that comes down to the full follow-up, the full cycle management of that event, so that you're really working with the person, because there's nothing more frustrating than that new user is you got most of it done, but then they can't actually print to the printer that's next to them. And so making sure that everything's sort of done all the way end to end is all part of that experience.
And your KPI becomes the experience you've delivered, of which time is a component, but isn't the primary. Like in a service level agreement, it's time driven. All of them. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, the measurement comes a little bit more customized and a little bit more deliberate. And the example that we've heard is that you can walk into a store and sort of say, "Hey, where's the bread?" And somebody, "Oh, it's over in aisle 15." Or somebody can walk you over and then make sure that not only did you find the bread, but you actually had anything else in your sort of shopping list. Those two, same store, and it didn't cost you that much more to deliver the full experience. So for us, this is where we're heading, and we're super excited about it. XLA, and we're not sort of we're stealing some of these ideas and concepts. There's a great company out of the US, or out of the UK, that specializes in XLA, and we're contracting them to help us through this journey on how to find all of the critical measurement points within our engagement to our clients. So very exciting.
Well, related to that, to our customer experience, would be regionalization. So explore with us a little bit, Alex, why we're regionalizing, what it means, and why it should matter to our clients.
Yeah, Devon, we heard time and time again that, that we want somebody that's familiar with our business. We want somebody that that when we speak, we don't want to speak to a new person every single time. And as we've grown, we pushed heavily into a nationalized format, especially during COVID. It actually made a lot more sense is to sort of find some optimization through nationalizing and sort of really pushing. We had managers that were managing people across the country, but really now sort of pushing that down into now more of a regional format. Is the whole purpose is so that we can engage directly with our client and be more familiar. And I think this is some of the old F12 sort of coming back. And so for me, this is it's being well received. It's already in place, and it's being well received. And I think this allows us to engage through the billing, through the day-to-day management of our clients, and sort of working with them, knowing when there's a challenge, how fast can we sort of enact. We're not reliant on sort of somebody in another time zone to sort of step in and get it done. But that said, we have this overlay of technical resources that are still available across the country. So we could still leverage our size and scope, but really have a local flavor to the whole thing.
So security operations, data center operations, tier 3 advanced computing can be nationalized when the going gets really tough, if you don't mind my saying so. But that day-to-day client experience can be more familiar. And if you're a client, you're joining us, we have a general manager now of each province. So there's a buck stops here person, Yang, Bonnie, and Mike. And if you haven't met your GM already, we are going to be having an open house. You'll get an invitation to meet up with them early in the year here. We're pretty excited to, as part of this new world, we can have, events and cocktails and
real
get to know each other again personally. Yeah. Terrific. All right, let's move to number 3 on our priorities, and this was about process excellence and how we can bring automation, intelligence, and elevate our client experience through systems. If I could use it, systems and procedures.
Yeah, no. So if you think about processes in a business that sort of develop in everything in our organization, whether it's creating a ticket or running a project or whatever, and every organization has a different version. They have this very linear pattern, and most applications that were developed in the 90s and 2000s and in that era were all very linear. This has to happen before the next thing happens, before the next thing happens, before the next thing happens.
So going to my example earlier of adding a new user, you've got all these things that need to happen, and they need to happen in series. This, get that, and everything has to wait while it happens. Yeah.
And a better way to do that is if certain things can be done in parallel as they're occurring, because if they can happen at the same time, now all of a sudden the whole length of time to actually do it is shortened greatly. But the problem is the tools and the applications were dependent, and process went from thing to thing. People lost visibility during those in a lot of the applications.
So you hand it off to admin to get the new license, let's say, procured.
Yeah.
And then that issue has to come back, and it's kind of dark between that. Yeah.
And every movement had a chance of sort of something slipping through the cracks.
Okay.
So now when we think about process management, there's some really great technologies. And in fact, one of the top 3 companies, software companies in the world called ServiceNow, really saw this as a challenge for organizations and sort of came up with a way to manage process in a very different way, where events that occur can now go down multiple veins all at the same time and have oversight where you want to have them. And all of this is hyper customizable. And it just doesn't end at F12 as an example. We could take this kind of technology and put it into the client, so that anything that they do, whether it's, I need to procure a vehicle, or I need to procure a computer, or we have a new onboarding of a new person that's coming into their organization.
These things all need to happen, yeah.
And all of those can actually happen, and we can enable that for their organizations with this kind of, that automatically connects up to us and then gives them oversight as to what's happening. So this is a game changer in sort of the way that processes are managed. This was not available. This was an enterprise-led application, like most things are. That's now available more into the mid-market, into the SMB, and probably one of the most exciting things that I think we've ever ventured into is heading down this path. So
what I'm most excited about is that how it can, right now, in order to do things accurately, we have to have checklists and procedures that techs have to follow with perfect fidelity in order to get it right. A system will know this is a client and this is the role in a client. Here are the steps, and will orchestrate a customized engagement for within every organization. I think it's groundbreaking, and I couldn't be more excited. We're running out of time here, Alex, so I'll go to our last one, which is about maturing cybersecurity. And I had a question come in, so I'm going to frame it this way, to share this. Is the cybersecurity talent gap improving in Canada, and will this lead to more resilience on AI technology?
Is it improving? No, there's not enough cybersecurity folks in Canada, in the world. I mean, this is
and
like
the ones
artificial
we do make, by the
intelligence.
way, are hired before they're graduated to go to Silicon Valley. Talking to some folks from the leading universities in Canada, it's trouble.
No, and because this is becoming the top priority in all IT agendas. It's certainly taking, and for F12, we had security embedded through our organization. So our security products and what we did on firewall and the management and these things were embedded in our programs. So for the first time in 2023, security is going to have its own distinct department within F12. And we're going to continue to stack up, and we know, because this isn't going to end in 2025. This is going to be with us for the long haul. And so what we've seen as a trend in security in general, we can relate back to sort of our experience, because what we've seen is something as simple as penetration testing, Devon, as an example. This was expensive to do. So either you were in a regulated industry and you did it because you had to, or you just didn't do it. Mm-hmm. And it is one of the easiest ways for us to understand where the holes are in an organization, where those vulnerabilities are, what are the things that we should be doing in order to protect them. And people wouldn't do them because it was too expensive. So at F12, we've embarked on an automated fashion of a technology that uses things like artificial intelligence in order to actually do what the penetration testing would be done by a human. We can do by and large in an automated world. So this is another groundbreaking technology that we can bring to our clients and do it a lot, less expensive.
It's interesting because I feel, it's not just the data is telling me that we're pivoting from an IT company that also provides security to a security company, a cybersecurity company that provides secure IT. Like, this is the leading desire of organizations that are reaching out to F12. The talent question I think is apt, because just like not every organization can have all of the levels of IT talent, they can't get all of the levels of cybersecurity talent.
Correct.
So we have to bring that to them. And I'm proud to share that we had two members of our team get their CISSP certification last year, and we're going to continue to dive into that cybersecurity. We are at time here. I want to just hold you for 5 minutes.
Sure.
If there's any more questions that any of our audience have, we've got our CEO, Alex Webb, on here, and another one has come in. It asks, will moving to the experience engagement have an effect on response times? I think you were talking about the tension between fast and good, if I could dumb it down to that level. Will we be compromising the speed of our response, which we know clients like, in order to improve our experience?
No, I think the response time is only one element of, when I talk about the time measurement, it's actually what we accomplish after that response moment is what. So the answer is no. Response time is critical. That we get to the problem and start activating it quickly, like as far as move. But what we want to do is the amount of time to actually solve the problem. We want that that's where the experience happens.
The first time, solve it the first time. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. Once and done, I do believe The Rock calls it.
Yeah, and one and done. I think it's they short
one and done.
One and done. I think part of this too is the talent that's answering the phone or picking up the email and helping resolve the issue. We did a lot over the last year to level up our team, to require more certifications, more expectations in terms of their technical acumen. So, get better chefs, you'll get a better pizza. And,
right.
If you don't have to remake pizzas, you can probably get them out faster too. I'd argue with that. Excellent. Well, I don't see we have any more comments. Thanks to everybody who's joined us for our conversation today. I can speak for the team at F12. We are incredibly excited about these initiatives that we have. They're lofty. They're going to require whole organization changes, and I can't wait to end the year and talk about how we got it done. Thank you for joining us, Alex.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.